Max Caulfield made a lot of friends and enemies during her time at Blackwell Academy in Life is Strange. Which ones could we see returning in Double Exposure, and how will they show up 10 years later? With the window of time before the next entry in the series quickly closing in, it's time to explore these questions. While developers have constantly assured us that knowledge of Life is Strange 1 isn't necessary to enjoy Double Exposure, they never said there wouldn't be some nods here and there. So let's explore the possibilities for cameos together. Be warned that there may be major plot spoilers ahead for all Life is Strange games. You've been warned. Before we get into this video, most people who watch my videos aren't subscribed to my channel. If you enjoy these kinds of videos, consider subscribing for more Life is Strange and Lost Records content. It massively helps me out. The first and most obvious candidate for a cameo return is none other than Khloe Price, Max's girlfriend from the first game. While Khloe's fate after the events of the first game is determined by player choice, it definitely hasn't stopped fans from expecting her return. Max and Khloe always come as a pair, and so it's no surprise that people want more of that same energy back in Double Exposure. Out of all the characters on this list that I'll mention, Khloe is actually the most likely to return. All promotional materials for Double Exposure thus far have been strategically secretive about Khloe's role in the story, and whether she'll feature in the game, which has caused rampant speculation in the fandom. I actually talked about Khloe and the possibility of her appearing in Double Exposure in a separate video, which I'll link in the description, but here's the basic rundown. Khloe is an integral part of Max's character in at least one of the endings. We can see that most of the promotional materials for the game thus far have been recorded from the ending where Khloe died in Arcadia Bay. Some fans have speculated that Khloe may be dead in one of the game's two timelines and alive in the other. However, this is almost definitely not true. Both Max and the game's narrative director have stated that the only difference between the two timelines we'll explore in the game is whether Safi lives or dies. Since Deck 9 have stated that Double Exposure will honour your choices from the first Life is Strange, the game will likely ask the player to confirm the details of their original playthrough. It's basically confirmed that Khloe's status will be consistent across both timelines. Not to mention, Rihanna DeVry, Khloe's motion and voice actor who has played her in all Deck 9 games since Before the Storm, is listed as having an upcoming credit for a voiceover and motion capture project, which is not yet named. Rihanna's voice is synonymous with Khloe at this point for many of us, and it wouldn't surprise me if they were tasked with voicing her. If you listen back to the re-recorded voice lines where Max is having a flashback to the Arcadia Bay storm, the voice of Khloe saying Max is notably not Ashley Birch. It may be Rihanna DeVry.
This is not a test.
Max!
The emergency broadcast system is now in effect.
I caused this! I caused all of this!
Khloe is almost guaranteed to make an appearance who opted to sacrifice Arcadia Bay, and she'll likely appear through texts, phone calls, Max's in-game journal, as well as maybe a physical appearance in later episodes. However, people have spent so much time wondering about what the game will look like for players who chose to save Khloe's life, but many haven't even stopped to think about how the game will reward players who chose to save Arcadia Bay. Deck 9 are likely well aware that they'll need to balance the two separate paths to make them equally rewarding. It would be unfair to give lots of fanservice content to only around 50% of the player base. So which of the cast of Arcadians could we see returning? The first character that springs to mind is Victoria Chase, Blackwell Academy's slightly more hipster version of Regina George. Many fans may not remember, but in Life is Strange 2, it was confirmed that Victoria will canonically survive in both timelines. She was kidnapped and taken to Mr. Jefferson's bunker the night before the storm began, which was able to withstand the elements and survive the tornado, even if Max didn't save the town. By the end of the first game, it seemed like Victoria was on much better terms with Max than at the start. If Khloe died during the game, Victoria will even attend her funeral, likely in solidarity for Max. The two of them seem like they'd have been really good friends if they were a bit less insecure. It would be nice to see the two of them being friends as adults, without the pressure of competing at a prestigious art academy to drive them apart. We even saw a glimpse of this in the alternate timeline where Max is popular and well-liked, and Victoria is her best friend. While it is possible for Max to end the game on poor terms with Victoria, and the two scarcely interacted with each other after the storm, I can't imagine they wouldn't at least be on Facebook friend terms. I don't think she'll make a physical appearance in the game, but there's a high possibility of us seeing text between them, social media comments, or maybe even pictures of them together. If Victoria is still a name in the art world for her photography, it would make even more sense for Max to keep in touch. Another likely candidate to return is Kate Marsh, Max's college neighbour and friend. While Kate's fate in the Sacrifice Arcadia Bay timeline is completely unknown, we do know that she's alive if the player chooses to sacrifice Khloe. Assuming that after Khloe died, Max continued to attend Blackwell Academy to finish her studies, it's likely that Kate would have acted as a supportive figure for her while she went through this period of grief. I can see the two growing closer over the year, and it's likely that they'd have kept touch after finishing school. I think Kate may be mentioned as a background character in the Sacrifice Arcadia Bay ending, but it's likely she may be more of an active presence in Max's life if the player chose to save the bay instead. I could see her appearing in texts, on Max's social media, and there may even be pictures of them together in Max's room. Speaking of Max's friends, Warren is a great candidate for a determinant appearance. Warren is one of the only characters besides Joyce and Frank who is a confirmed casualty in the storm, meaning we know we're not going to hear anything from him if we chose to save Khloe, but it's very likely we'll see an appearance from him in the Sacrifice Khloe ending. He was at her funeral, probably there to support Max, and it's likely he continued to be there for her during the next year at Blackwell. I don't think Deck 9 would dare canonize any kind of romance between Max and Warren, and even though he's a bit of a simp, I don't think he's low enough to try and get into Max's pants after she just lost her best friend. It's likely the two continued to be friends and Warren's crush died off after a while, or Max politely rejected him at some point. However, the two clearly had a nice friendship going on, and I think Warren is probably mature enough to keep that friendship going, even if he wasn't getting anything romantic from it. I think Warren might be a good candidate to replace some of the Khloe content in Double Exposure. He's not likely to play a role in the plot at all, but I could see Max having a phone call with him at some point to talk about the strange goings-on at Caledon University, or about her new power. He might just be a good presence in Max's life, and it would be interesting to see what he's been getting up to in the time between Arcadia and Caledon. Joyce, and to a lesser extent David, are also likely to be mentioned at some point. While Max and David were definitely able to reach an amicable conclusion by the end of the first game, they were never very close, even if he does survive in both timelines. Even though we saw Khloe calling him in Life is Strange 2, I think it's not likely that Max would have such a close relationship with her girlfriend's stepdad. Joyce, however, could have a much bigger role to play in the Sacrifice Khloe ending. We know that Max has a tendency to ghost people after traumatic events from when Khloe's dad died, but I have the feeling she wouldn't want to make the same mistake twice. Life is Strange 1's ending montage for those who chose to let Khloe die includes Max spending time with Joyce. I think it's likely she'd want to stay in contact with Joyce. I mean, she practically grew up in her house, and she was like a second mum to her. I could see her being in Max's texts, maybe on her social media, and I think it's likely there'll be some references to her cooking. One of the pivotal aspects of Max's nostalgia for Arcadia Bay was missing Joyce's food. Choosing what to order in episode 2 has been made into memes all over the internet, and I wouldn't imagine Deck 9 to pass up the opportunity to make an omelette versus Belgian waffle callback. The final returning character I wanted to talk about is none other than Mark Jefferson, Max's photography teacher from Blackwell Academy, and more importantly, her kidnapper. For years, Mr. Jefferson traveled around the country, kidnapping and assaulting teenage girls in an extremely predatory way, even going as far as to groom a mentally ill student at Blackwell Academy into doing the same thing. Now, will Mr. Jefferson randomly show up at Caledon and announce that he is the killer? No, not at all. But given that it seems Max's secrecy and trauma will be central themes in Double Exposure, I'd be very surprised if Jefferson didn't appear in the form of a flashback or a nightmare sequence. Without fail, every single Life is Strange game has had some form of dream or nightmare sequence, and I think they'd be remiss not to include Mr. Jefferson as part of Max's nightmares. Deck 9 have the potential to do something very interesting with Max. She spent time in the dark room, drugged and kidnapped by Mr. Jefferson, and yet in both timelines at the end of the game, these events never happened because Max went back in time to prevent them, but she still experienced them. This leaves Max in a peculiar situation. She has all the trauma associated with being a victim of the dark room, and yet it never technically happened. Deck 9 could use this as an opportunity to explore some interesting themes about the stories of survivors and how they may feel they can't speak out about their experiences. If it's handled with the proper sensitivity you'd expect from such a topic, I feel like they could do something really interesting by starting that conversation. The events of the first game were very traumatic for Max. It meant a lot for her to be drugged, kidnapped, and assaulted by an authority figure she trusted, and even 9 years down the line, it's unlikely she would have recovered from it. That's the sort of thing that affects you for the rest of your life. It's almost guaranteed that this will be mentioned in some capacity, but we'll have to see how Max's trauma surrounding Jefferson manifests. Hi, editing me here. We just heard through the ESRB rating of Double Exposure that the game will feature black and white photos of female characters lying in vulnerable positions. If that doesn't tell you there's a Jefferson flashback in this game, I don't know what will. Thank you so much for watching this video. I've been really enjoying theorizing about double exposure lately, and we've still got so much to discuss. So why not stick around for the ride and subscribe to my channel? If you did enjoy this video, be sure to give it a like, and let me know who you think will be returning down in the comments below. I'm sure there's so many potential avenues I haven't even thought of. I read all of your comments, and I even use them as inspiration for my future videos. If you'd like to show your support in the form of a tip, I've also linked my Patreon, and why not join our Discord server, where we discuss all things Life is Strange. With that, I think I've said my piece. Thank you so much for watching, remember to stay hydrated, and have a nice day. Bye bye!